Ladies and gentlemen, the weekend.
And ladies and gentlemen, it is the weekend. And I am William R. Washington. And this is Wrestling with Weekends. And this is not only Wrestling with Weekends, it is the end of an incredibly long journey here on Wrestling with Weekends. That's right, folks. 7 weeks of Wrestling with the Weekends is coming to an end. And this is the last edition of Wrestling with Weekends. But I'm still William R. Washington, but I'm joined by a very special guest. Folks, it is the one and only Barry Murphy. And look, I did it right this time. I pointed in the right direction after 7 weeks.
That is such a hard thing to master. I'm constantly, as someone who's new to the adding PNGs to video broadcasts for Twitch and stuff like that, I'm constantly going, hey, look, the chat's over here. Oh, no, the game, no, you're looking this direction. Whatever, you know what you're looking at. Yeah, I'm very excited to be here on the last episode.
It's like you're looking at the live feed of things, but it's not a mirrored image. And I almost wish it was, just so things made just a little bit of sense. But I also get that I need to see it as the viewer sees it. How are you doing, by the way?
I'm great. I'm feeling good. It's bittersweet to be here on the last Wrestling with Weekends. But great 7-episode run. That if that makes this the podcast equivalent of Wrestling Society X, I mean that's not a bad comp. People like that show. But yeah, I'm glad to get on. I remember when you started doing this, I was like, me and Will, we're constantly trying to do stuff and schedules don't align and we can never make it work. We should do one of these at some stage. And then here we are, on the very last one on a very fateful week for yourself. I'm glad I could be here though.
I know this is like one of I forget how many more podcasts I've got left. I've got to do the Extreme Rules recap show tomorrow, and then
tomorrow, holy shit!
Yeah, it is Extreme Rules, and then we've got one more Patreon podcast, and then my final RBR on Tuesday, and then that's it. I'll say this much. Everybody's been wondering what's going on because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me, of all people, to be leaving RBR. I'll say this. Wednesday, it will make sense. And by Wednesday, it should all make sense. And I will even on Wednesday be willing to talk about it. And I was thinking maybe doing like a Twitter Spaces on Wednesday. That's about the furthest I'll go, though. But Wednesday is the day that I will do that. Don't forget, folks, for those of you who are listening to the audio of this, that there's video. Although I'm wondering, did it post to my Twitter? I hope it did. Okay, good. Yeah, yep, there it is, because you retweeted it. So well, what's interesting is the live viewer count is like wrong on StreamYard, because I can see that there's viewers on Twitter, but StreamYard's not picking those up. And so it's giving me an inaccurate count. And same with YouTube. I see that there's people listening on YouTube or viewing on YouTube. And don't forget, if you comment, I can bring those up on screen. So leave some comments and I will happily bring those up. But you can also just listen to audio of this. It's at mixler.com/fanoff. As always, you can also call. Actually, calls aren't going to work today because I switched the microphone setup. Don't call. That's not going to work.
I demanded not to be spoken to. I demanded. It wasn't Will's decision. I insisted on it.
Yeah. If you call, I'd be able to hear you. Barry would not, because I changed the setup from last week. So that's not going to work. Hey, last night, by the way, I went and saw Living Color.
Whoa, cool.
I said I got a shirt. There it is. Living Color.
Very nice.
Yeah. I saw Living Color in concert alongside Hoobastank. I learned that I knew more than one Hoobastank song because I didn't think I knew any. Actually, I knew one of them, The Reason. And the only reason I knew that was because I'm pretty good at musical trivia. And I'm pretty sure that was the #1 song of 2004. And so anytime that happens to come up in a random like game of musical trivia, I'm like, oh yeah, it's The Reason by
You know.
Hoobastank.
Right.
Yeah. But other than that, I didn't know I knew any of their other songs. And then a couple of them played, and I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I do know that. But what was kind of fun was, and this is where I will give them credit as a band. So there were two sections. There was they had the general admission section, and then there was a barricade, and then everybody who paid for like the good section.
Right.
And there's a huge gap in between. And so Hoobastank does one song, and then the lead singer is like, okay, I have to address the elephant in the room. And he's like, so I'm guessing, he's like, I've never been to this venue before, but I'm just guessing that everybody who's up here, up near the stage, paid a little bit more than everybody who's back there. And he's like, but I'm going to just tell you as a musician, that fucking sucks. He's like, the fact that there's like that big of a gap between people, and like we've only got all these few people up here. And he said, wouldn't it be better if, and he's like, I know you guys up front paid a little bit more, so you feel like you shouldn't have to interact with all those peasants back there. And he's like,
fuck you if you think that.
But he's like, wouldn't it make for a better experience if everyone was just up here? And he's like, because I think it would make for a better performance for us. So I'm just going to say, I think everyone should just come up here and fuck the barricade. And like, I could catch the hint at where he was going. So I grabbed Corey's hand and I'm like, come here. And so we like get right near security, and we're just waiting for him to make that statement. And then we're like, we're just going to rush in. And so he finally says, how about everybody who's in general admission, just come up here right now. And then security stops us and is like, no. And then they're like, but he just fucking said. And finally somebody like right next to me is like, fuck this, and like shoves the security guard. And we all rush through, and we all fill the area near the stage. And all of a sudden,
summary from Joker 2019. Like, is that what happens in that movie? We really do live in a society.
Yeah,
sorry, man. He's the artist stage. We're all the same. Get out of my way.
Yeah. And then that's exactly what happened, because then
that's awesome.
He was like, now we got a fucking concert. And then they play the next song. and they filled the whole area. And it was actually cool that they did that. So props. But otherwise, it was cool to see Living Color. And I knew all their songs, but most people were like, play Cult of Personality. They're like, we're going to finish with that, but we got other songs. And they did the rest of them, and then finally ended with Cult of Personality. And that was worth noting because that was, as I said on Twitter, the 5th time I was in a crowd this week singing Cult of Personality since Punk made 2 entrances at Grand Slam, which I was at, and was a, I think this is a technical term, motherfucking blast. I haven't had that much fun at a pro wrestling show since, I guess, All Out 2 weeks ago. But it was fun. I will say that AEW tried to warn people, and people were still upset. I get what they were upset about, but they put out some tweets that were like, if you're coming to Arthur Ashe Stadium, take public transit, because it's going to be a mess as far as traffic is concerned. And just know that. So for whatever reason, my dear friend and former RBR host Nick Marsico missed that memo and decided to drive. And I know a few people who came into town and got rental cars and tried to drive. I was with Anthony Scatz. He and I split a hotel, and we Ubered, which worked out quite well. Except for the fact that I think the guy who drove our Uber, I think he was a little upset because on paper, it looked like a short drive from our hotel. It was like a 6-minute drive. Right. But there was so much traffic that it turned into like 25 minutes. But we still got there like right on time, and it was cool. They checked our Vax cards and everything. Oh, hey, here's a message from Rich Duran. It says, "Thank you, Will. RBR won't be the same without you. The joy in your voice while you talk about AEW was always fantastic." I mean, I guess I do have joy in my voice. Look, I fucking like this shit. Like,
no, absolutely. I mean, it's really nice. I think like not to just get straight into RBR history pods, but it's kind of like the ups and downs of wrestling that you and all the other guys have enjoyed over the last 16 years. It's pretty cool that it's concluding on a high note. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Go back to 2008 and send an email to the show going, "Hey, do you ever think wrestling will not suck ass again ever?" And the answer will probably be no, probably not. I like I like 2 TNA matches a year. That's okay. Here at ROH going to this HD net thing. That sounds cool. I'll watch that. That was the lifeline you were holding on to. So it's really cool that right as it's crescendoing, it's kind of like that's the climax of your story. And I definitely agree with that comment. It's been energizing the last few months.
Yep. And Mac in the chat, he said took an Uber. They took a random route and almost got another $14 out of it. Yeah, it was. Ubers were quite an experience, and that was the other thing. So I had done some reading, but I guess I hadn't experienced it like actually. But so the hotel we got was just some random hotel. It was like hotels in Queens was what we looked up.
Right.
Now, keep in mind, folks, and I know, like Mac, you're from Brooklyn. You're way more familiar with New York than I could ever be. And so I didn't I've always heard about Chinatown in Queens. I didn't realize that I booked a hotel in it, which was so cool. Because my hotel, like dead smack in the middle of Chinatown. And what was cool was, so yeah, every employee at the hotel was of Asian descent. I'm not going to pinpoint that because I could be very wrong. We definitely, Scats turns on the TV just because we had been traveling all day, and it was on a Chinese station, and all of our Uber drivers were Asian, and it was cool. It was because I live in Aurora, Colorado. It's a very melting pot kind of place where we don't necessarily have almost in Max said Main Street. I think it was. You have to look up. We stayed at the One Boutique Hotel. It was a nice hotel. And yeah, everything about it was nice. Stayed on the 7th floor. But yeah, just finally getting to Arthur Ashe, we got there. I think it's funny, and I saw Rovert make a gag about it, but the amount of people, there was a lot of talk. Andrew Zarian had tweeted about how they were, for the most part, kind of ill prepared. Right. And it's one of those, when they booked it, did they think this was just going to be some business conference or something? All of these buildings that AEW books are typically non-wrestling buildings, and the staff is constantly ill prepared. It's almost as if they don't realize what they're taking on whenever they take on AEW, because in Dallas, it's whenever they run Dallas, they run the Curtis Culwell Center, which is usually used for college graduations and not rowdy ass wrestling fans,
right?
Who are going to see a 4-hour show.
But also, is it also because if outside of the wrestling fan bubble, do the people who work there and management just think, oh, it's second tier non WWE wrestling? It might sell it could be a complete bomb. It could be 5,000 fans and they never come back. And it maybe that's just kind of the case. I've been to venues like that myself where they massively underestimate. The first when Kenny Omega himself came to Dublin. They went to the National Boxing Stadium. They ran out of beer after 3 matches. They're like, "What are you people doing? There's 2,500 wrestling fans here. We drink lots of beer." So some venues, I guess they just we probably overestimate the homework they do. They probably don't really do any homework, I don't think, when it comes to this stuff.
Well, and yeah, it was because I remember the first AEW show I went to in Denver. As the guy was taking our tickets, he saw all the people and he literally asked, he's like, "So what is this?" It was the guy taking her tickets, and because he saw that many people, and I think he was just used to, because they typically run smaller venues and they're not used to all of these people showing up. Now that said, Arthur Ashe is the home of the U.S. Open and typically does fill up with like 20,000 people. So you'd think they would have been a little better prepared, but I guess they thought this was going to be something smaller. At least the staff did, but they were all just like super surprised. And then just a couple more stories from around the show. I have one really funny story. So I get into the venue and I did, I was obviously on screen a lot as everybody was like sending me pictures of myself the whole night. And thank you for those. I do appreciate them. I didn't know that's where my seat was going to be. All I knew was I was in section 4, which is next to the ramp, seat 8 and row 3. Those were the things I knew. So I finally get to the section. I struggled to even get to the floor because I had no idea how to even access it. And so I finally, I bumped into Mike Harmeyer and I'm like, how the fuck do I get to the floor? And he's like, I think the entrance is over there. And he guides me to get to the floor. And I get down there and I see that I do an immediate count as I look at the section because I noticed the section only has 8 seats. And I thought, I'm seat 8. And so I went, out of curiosity, does this count from the outside or inside?
You're right.
And they're like,
big difference.
Yeah. And they were like, counts from the outside. And I'm like, fuck, yes. And so I like run to my seat. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh my God, I'm like next to the ramp. I could literally touch the video floor. I was that close. And then there's little notes on everybody's seats that are like, hey, you get to keep your chair. And so that was exciting because I already have next to me, there is a Royal Rumble chair right there, a SummerSlam chair. I collect the chairs from the events I go to. I was not expecting to take a chair with this one. Now, the thing is, with the chairs, I've never had to take one home myself. Theron Reynolds always takes them home for me. And so after the show was over, I called Theron and I'm like, hey, how do you get these home? And he's like, are you flying Southwest? I said, yeah. And he goes, cool. Use that as your free item. And I was like, oh, it works that way? Cool. All right. Perfect. So I, for the rest of the night, am like clutching this chair for dear life because I swear to you, and Anthony Scatz can attest to this, I was stopped at least 9 times by people who were trying to get the chair from me. Like one guy just walks up to me and he goes, $100 for the chair. And I was like, no. And he goes, all right, 150.
Why do wrestling fans have so much money? What? Give me this chair you've been sitting on for 5 hours? Oh my God.
Oh, wait. He goes, 150. And I'm like, no. And I'm like, no. And he goes, 300. Most I got. And I'm like,
oh my God.
I'm like, no, I'm not giving up the fucking chair. And so I was like, that was weird. That was the first guy. But then literally security guard stops me and he's like, how much you want for the chair? And I'm like, I'm not selling the fucking chair. And I'm on the street and guy stops me and he's like, what do you want for the chair? And Scatz is with me. There literally people just stopping me for the chair. And I'm like, okay, clearly I need to clutch this thing for dear life. I am not giving up the chair. But the best part of this story is I took Theron's advice and I was just going to try to take it through TSA. I was just going to take it through security. And so I put the chair through the TSA scanner and it red flags, of course. And so the TSA guard is like, you can't take this on the plane. And I was like, he was like, you're going to have to check this. And Theron also warned me. He said, don't check it because, well, what did he say? He said, I've had chairs stolen before. Right. He said, don't check it. And so I was like, I'm not checking the chair. And I was like, I've done this before. And I hadn't, but I was at least going off of what Theron had said. So I was like, I've done this before. I've checked I've taken chairs on the plane before. And he's like, I don't think so. I had to check with the manager. And so he takes me to the manager, and this is such a like Ryan Satin story, but it's fucking true.
No, go ahead.
But
Absolutely, I believe you.
he takes me to the manager, and the guy goes, he's like, "Hey, can this guy take this chair?" And the guy looks at the chair and goes, "Oh my God, you were there last night? Did you see that Brian and Kenny match?" And I'm like, yeah, I was there. And he's like, "My God, was it that good in person?" And I was like, "Yeah, it was fucking great." And he's like, "Let this guy through." And I took the chair on the plane. I lucked out on the fact that the fucking manager was a wrestling fan, and he let me take the chair on the plane.
The only thing better be, wow, yeah, that's so awesome. I'm so jealous. So give me the chair or get another flight. Those are your options. I have to have the chair.
Yeah, he was so cool about it. He was just like, "Let this guy through," and he let me through, and I got the chair on the plane, and I brought it home. And that was my travel story for going to AEW Grand Slam. Literally 5 hours of pro wrestling because we anticipated the 4 hours because we knew Dynamite was going to tape. We knew Dynamite was live. We knew Rampage was going to tape. Most people didn't know that there was also AEW Elevation that was going to take place, and so that kicked off like right as the show started. It was only 3 matches though. It's like the shortest episode of Elevation that's going to air, and none of the matches are of significance. You'll see when the lineup comes out. It's literally Thunder Rosa had a match, the Dark Order has a match, and Tall Paul has a match, and he squashes 3 jobbers, and there's a 3-way test of strength spot in that match that I was like, yeah, Paul's gonna lose it for this. But other than that, there's nothing to it. But I knew in my heart, I was like, they have to open with Brian and Kenny. And I know I've seen some debate about whether or not that's the right call. Look, folks, here's the thing about the way AEW opens shows and what opens AEW shows. AEW doesn't have the luxury of an overrun the way that like NXT does or the way that Raw used to. So for somebody like AEW, when it comes to your time, it is really, how do I put this? The first thing that you put on the show is almost the one that's guaranteed to get the maximum allotted time. It's like the CM Punk thing where it's like you could have opened or you could have closed with CM Punk when he returned at the first dance, but you run the risk of the matches before having run long and Punk not getting as much time as he would have needed. And it's like, if you want to get the maximum amount of time out of something, the first make it the first thing, because then everything else can be adjusted around that. But you can't necessarily get time back if stuff goes beforehand and runs long. And so I think it was absolutely the right call. Maybe not the right call for the energy of the crowd, but Brian and Kenny. And look, dude, Bryan Danielson, my all-time favorite wrestler. Kenny Omega, probably in my top 3 for current favorites. It's been a fucking dream match for just a couple years now. And I knew it was something I wanted to see. I didn't know if it was going to be something I was going to get to see, but holy goddamn shit, I got to see it, and the crowd got to see it, and the crowd was so hyped, and like Brian's music hits and everybody loses it, and Kenny's music hits and everybody boos, and I was so happy that Kenny got his full theme on an episode of Dynamite, because that's literally never happened. They did the whole entrance and everything, and like the moment the bell rang, the insanity of that place, just everybody screaming their heads off, and nothing has happened yet. They're literally just staring each other down. Like, people have compared it to Rock Hogan. That is an accurate comparison, because the way that these two were just staring each other down without having touched yet, and they are just losing it. And then when they finally do lock up, and the pop for a fucking lockup was so great. And And there was a lot of heat for Kenny. Like I was expecting
Yeah.
maybe a little bit more of a mixed reaction, but no, everybody was into Brian. And Kenny really he got the heat he needed. And the match was fucking amazing. It was everything
I think there's a lot of great things we can say about Brian and will say about Bryan Danielson and the difference between this and his last few WWE matches and lots of stuff. But I rewatched it the next day. I stayed up to watch it live. I took the day off work to stay up until 3 a.m. to watch this match live.
Nice.
And then when I got up the next morning, I then watched it first thing again over my breakfast. The thing on watching it back, I was like, it was a two-man match. It was absolutely, people do like to drag their feet on Kenny a little bit, and I think he deserves a lot of credit, not only for his performance, but it was a great heel Kenny Omega performance. I don't love the Kenny character. It's not my favorite thing in the world right now, but he was on in that night. He got tremendous boos. It wasn't this
and the way he like
both,
there were certain things he did too. Like I liked the way that every time Brian tried to tie him up, Kenny would immediately go for the ropes as just like nope, can't touch me, I'm on the ropes. And then like Brian would just like kick him. And God, and it got great heat. Like the fans like very easily and quickly picked up on what Kenny was doing. And I agree. He did great, tremendous heel work in that match.
And it just really felt like the realization of everything building up this match for both guys, which was great because as great as Danielson is, you don't want him to overshadow Kenny, especially because it's a draw. We're not doing this hot shot thing where it's like, okay, put the belt on Brian, he's the guy, put him on the poster. It's like, no, they're doing a draw. We've still got these plans. We have XYZ plan we're working on. So Kenny has to come out of this still looking like he's a guy and the guy, really. And I think they more than did that. And I love just beautiful, just such great, simple heel heat. He's tweeted straight after the match, no rematch. You get no rematch. You got your one. I was polite enough to give you unranked little dweeb. I was polite enough to give you a match. Back of the line. Stick around for the graphic on Tuesday to see where you're ranked because you ain't number one. Love it.
And some of the things that Brian's really good at, and he's known this for a while. Because he's talked about this in interviews, that Brian knows that fans are aware of a couple of things. One, that Brian missed a year of action due to neck issues, and then he missed 3 years of action due to concussions. And so Brian is very aware of the reactions that any action involving his head or neck will get. Even if like upon second watch, you're like, oh, that was a lot safer than it looked. He can still really garner some huge emotional support in his matches by having opponents who focus on his head and neck. And a good example of that, and Antox in the chat brought up my reaction. He said, love the reaction you gave to Brian getting dumped on his head from that snap suplex, Will. Yeah. So, I mean, because that happened right in front of me. Yeah, it was right in front of me. And you see my face. And yeah, sure enough, I was like, look what's fucking happening. Like, he took the snap suplex on the video ramp. And then it was a Snapdragon suplex. And then Kenny runs up the stage and fans are already booing because they're thinking he's leaving. And then he turns around and he does that like super long running V trigger to Brian right on the ropes. And they go to break from that. And they come back and it's so back and forth. The thing I loved most about the draw finish, though, was where the draw occurred and what it meant to the match. Because I felt like this draw scenario was almost entirely unique. And I brought some examples because this was not the first time AEW's done a draw. AEW definitely has an established precedent of time limits. And I tweeted that yesterday when some dude was like, if WWE did it, you'd hate this. Well, like if WWE had time limits, they'd be a better company. But it's but it would take like I loved your point about how if they did a time limit draw, it would happen at like the 17-minute mark.
17th or 18th minute, and then next week they wouldn't even bother doing they wouldn't even do another time limit draw 1 week in preparation for the one they were doing next week. You know
right?
what I mean? It was just so
it's just randomly like actually we
also. Do you remember? You're the type of person who will remember this because I know you'll remember. Do you remember like 10 years ago, like they for like a month? I think it was with Del Rio. They tried to get like stoppages over. And he beat like Big Show by stoppage, but then they just lost interest in the idea, and I don't think they've done one like since. Do you know what I mean? That's the exact opposite. That's why how AEW hooked me in their early like pre-Dynamite days when they weren't perfect. They were a little rough around the edges, but they were like, oh, we're establishing some things. Wins, losses, draws can happen. I was like, okay,
yeah,
you got
like
me there.
I think one of the biggest reasons why I like the ranking system, because I've seen people complaining like get rid of the ranking system, but like the ranking system makes it really it really helps make sense of things that you would otherwise hate. Like, for example, I think had AEW just had Christian become number one contender, people would have been like, oh, fuck this. Like, nobody was asking for Christian versus Kenny. But if you had Christian rack up enough wins to where he just happens to be the contender right under Hangman, and then when Hangman's eliminated from contention, oh, Christian's here. It's like, well, he is there, so therefore, it works. But I brought some examples of why I loved Kenny versus specifically the Kenny ending. So I went and hunted down every single time AEW has done a draw finish due to time limits. The first time was, of course, this match here. And this is what I did was I took a screenshot at exactly the time that the time limit occurred, which this was the first one. It was Cody versus Darby. And notice Cody has Darby beat 1-2 time limit stoppage. And hey, there's Noel Foley in the background. And then and then there was the second time they did it, which was Moxley versus Pac. And again, 1-2 time limit stoppage. And then you had again, and so it was to look like, somebody got screwed in this process. And then you have Orange Cassidy had the TNT title 1-2 time limit. Here we have Bryan versus Kenny. This is the moment that the bell occurred. And it wasn't to come off in a way that it was supposed to be Bryan could have had it won if it weren't for the time limit, or Kenny could have had it won if it weren't for the time limit. The story they were simply telling was at the moment of the time limit stoppage, they were still fucking throwing chops. Like, these were two evenly matched guys who hadn't, at 30 minutes in, there was no clear winner. There was no clear decisive anything. It was a literal draw. It was at the 30-minute mark, neither guy had a clear advantage over the other. They were throwing back and forth. I love the exchange in that last minute of Bryan's running drop kick, and then Kenny hits a V trigger, and then a running drop kick, and like all of their like signature stuff back and forth, and they're just chopping each other, and then bell rings, and it's like we are clearly at a point where both these guys are evenly matched. There was no clear decisive winner, and I thought that was such a unique story or a unique way to go about the time limit stoppage. And Antox in the chat even noted the same things, that most times whenever a draw happens, it's usually when a person has their finish or submission and their opponent when the time expires. Yeah, and they showed they were on the same level. That was the story they were telling. And Dell does things in the chat, says RBR fans can rest easy knowing that the Patreon money kept you from selling that chair. Honestly, I couldn't have thought up a more perfect match than Bryan Danielson and Kenny Omega. It was everything I thought it was going to be. The draw finish was predictable, but also the right finish. There's beating Bryan in his first match wouldn't have been the right call, but also having the champ lose is also not the right call. Therefore, what do you do? And the answer is don't fuck the fans out of a finish. Like, don't, because I debated a little bit with some people on Twitter, or I guess I didn't really debate, but I saw people bring it up. I was like, do not engage. But you know, when I made the point that that the reason you can't say if WWE did this is because WWE doesn't have an established precedent to do this at all. They literally have no mechanism in place to do this kind of finish. Somebody said that, well, it's not any different than when WWE does a DQ. Completely different, because a DQ would have required either one person to break the rules or an interference, which is a completely different story than we're telling here. Double count out would not have been the same story, because this ended right in the middle of the ring with two guys fighting. WWE could have done, I suppose, a double, what is it? Where both guys are down, and so the referee counts them both down. That also would have sucked.
But again, they haven't done that properly in like 11, 12 years. I can't remember the last time they've done that. So to pull it out of the bag now would have made absolutely no sense, you know?
Yeah, it's so like there really wasn't a mechanism. This is one of those things that's almost like entirely unique to AEW, because AEW has the established, they laid the foundation for this. Like literally, if they never do another draw finish again, this was the payoff to 2 years of doing draw finishes. So I don't know. This is probably my match of the year. I had so much fun with it, and
I feel like it's certainly in the conversation, you know.
Yes.
It's just because I think you could have beaten Kenny, but not so soon after doing the Christian thing.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, he just did the Christian thing. I thought that was great. I thought it gave Christian a little bit of heat where people might not have expected him to have any. I thought that was very nicely done. But again, you don't want to walk that line too finely. And people, you know, always say, oh, you know, it's not about them versus WWE. It's like, it kind of is actually about that, because it actually is about that. I want them to not beat their champion like a drum. That's what I would like them to do, literally as a counter to what I've watched for 20 years. So you know, they could have beaten Kenny. It wouldn't have been the worst thing, but it still wouldn't have been great, you know. So I think the draw was right, and like you said, it was predictable, but it was right. I think that's kind of been a lesson of one of like AEW's philosophies so far, is if it's the right finish, being predictable doesn't matter. It's like we joked, I think you've even joked about it on RBR as well. Every highly original thinker on Twitter thought, wouldn't it be great if MJF came out to Cult of Personality first time? Oh, buddy, wouldn't that have been so funny? Or what if CM Punk came out and then they cut off his mic and we put him through fucking 10 flaming tables and he's out for a year? Oh, think of the heat, brother. And it's just like, no, you can just do the good thing. You can just do it. It's actually free to do that. You don't have to compromise it. You know what I mean? I think sometimes the obvious is the correct answer, and that was the case with the draw. I think the best way I saw it summed up, and this was after the first dance, I think Brandon Thurston said it. He said, pro wrestling booking is checkers, not chess. You don't have to think 17 different moves ahead. You can just do the lateral obvious move that's directly in front of you to get to your destination. And that's what they did here. And as a result of this, in 2, 6, however many months down the line, when they say, okay, we're going on pay-per-view, no time limit, or 60 minutes, or it's a title match, so it's 60 minutes, or whatever, people will be there, and they may just smash the record they just set for, All Out. I mean, who knows? So it's not just good in the moment, but it's the exact type of thing. And this is what I love about AEW. They are thinking about, okay, what's the next match? What's the next town? What's the next pay-per-view? This match was great in the moment and in what it's set up going forward. So I can't knock it in any way. I really can't.
Yeah, no, I came away from this just like I was so amazed. There was some really cool things happening in my section too, because you could probably see it. I felt really bad there's a guy in my section dressed as Bray Wyatt, and he was just like, Wyatt's coming tonight, man. Fucking know it. And I'm like, but he's not.
If Justin Roberts goes 60 seconds remaining, and then and fucking the Windengo or whatever that guy came up with on Reddit. Did you see that shit? The guy who fantasy booked the Windigo. If he appeared in the ring, I might have just like uninstalled Fight from every device I own and like given up wrestling for the rest of my life. I mean, there would have been no coming back. And in some ways, I feel bad for the Wyatt fans because it's like, boys, he's not coming back to Raw, and he's like, fellas, you're gonna have to watch Impact. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to watch Impact. That's where he's going. Just make your peace with it. Okay, it's an okay show. It's not a bad show. He's not showing up on Dynamite.
Oh, shit. Yeah, I felt for dude. I will say this. Okay. As a member of pro wrestling media, I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of inside baseball on AEW. The biggest hint that a big debut is happening is if there's a scheduled media call somewhere around the show, because usually the media will want to talk to said person, and Tony will answer questions about the media or to the media for said person. And if there's not a scheduled call around it, you can pretty much guarantee there's probably nothing to talk about following the show. And that's usually my philosophy when it comes to AEW debuts, and it hasn't really failed me. I mean, like, they had some surprises, right? Like, they didn't really have to answer any questions regarding what's his name, Malachi Black. Like, that was just he showed up, it was a surprise. But also they said that was a surprise on them, that they were like, oh shit, his contract's up like that, we didn't know that. And so
that was one of those like Canyon Seaman getting in loads of trouble situations.
Yeah,
some clerical error type thing. Yeah,
right. They didn't know. But either way, as far as Wyatt was concerned, no, Wyatt was not showing up there. I was hoping for Hangman. We didn't get it, but no, there was no way. No goddamn way. What else happened on that show? There was the CM Punk promo. It was a good promo. It definitely sounded different in the arena, in that I used the term arena. It was not an arena, it was a stadium, and it sound traveled like a stadium, to where being there in person sounded a whole lot better than it sounded on TV, where like the reactions came off kind of late. Right. And that just like CM Punk would say something, and then the cheers for it almost sounded like they had a little bit of a delay because sound traveled the way a stadium would. Either way, Punk's promo was fine. I wondered, and sure enough, the ratings reflected it if you've seen the quarter hours, but I wondered how MJF versus Brian Pillman Jr. was going to do, which was not well. Although I had a dream last night that Brian Pillman Jr. died, and I'm just now I know. And in my dream, there was like this whole narrative on social media about like, wow, he didn't even outlive his dad. Crazy. And like, that was the discussion everybody was having on social media. And I'm only just realizing this because I've only been awake an hour and a half. But that was my dream last night.
Okay, interesting. It was only in the ratings he died of death. No,
Yes.
And it actually wasn't even that bad. I mean, Dynamite did really well this week. It was one of those ones where I think everyone had sky high expectations, which they didn't quite hit, but they still did like a very, very good. Their new range that they've been in the last couple of months like blows away where they were even last.
I know,
year.
and it's consistent too. Like I think anybody that pays attention to ratings, especially quarter hours, it's really fascinating to watch kind of the up and down that wrestling shows can do. Like one of the things that people weren't really acknowledging with NXT a lot was Brandon Thurston would note it, but it was one of those things where like when NXT was on Wednesdays, NXT was benefiting a lot from the show that was on beforehand, because like some random episode of Law and Order was like doing 1 million viewers, and then So that first quarter of NXT would be like huge, but then the show would like nosedive after that. But
Right.
because it's an average of the 2 hours, that first quarter like would end up propping the show up a lot. And then you look at Raw, which is broken down over those 3 hours, and the third hour like always sinks. And we rarely ever get SmackDown quarters. But either way, my whole point about all of that is that AEW tends to be really consistent throughout, where like you look from beginning to end, and usually it's like 100,000 people difference between beginning of the show and end of the show, as far as how many people tune in and tune out. It's really consistent. The amount of people that stick with the show throughout is to me really impressive. It has a really good retention rate. And what else was on the show? There was the because they have 5 matches. So what, I feel like I'm forgetting one match. There was the okay, so we can talk about the Sting match because that was second to last. God, that guy just keeps fucking delivering.
Yeah, I want to see Sting live so bad now. Like, I really do.
I like, a year ago when people were like, and I had the same question of like, what are you really gonna get out of signing Sting? He's 62. Like, he's just gonna walk Darby to the ring all the time, like, or have some cinematic matches. Like, you're not gonna get Sting. And like, honestly, what Sting has done in the 4 matches he's had in AEW since coming back is a reminder of how much time was wasted with Sting, of like, because he was saying for the longest time, I can go still, and I'd like to have my Undertaker match. And they're like, oh, we don't know your neck, anything could happen. And he's like, no. I've talked to doctors. Like, I am clear. I'm good to go. I can't work a weekly schedule. I can't work a house show schedule, but I can work. And that's probably not going to happen. And just, he keeps coming through. And like, I felt so happy for Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler because knowing who they are, and I mean, you could see it. They literally came out in NWO black and white gear. And just knowing that they are like super hardcore old school marks, and they are just 2 guys who are absolutely all about like, oh my God, I can, like, they just lose it over the fact that they are accompanied to the ring by Tully Blanchard, that they get to work with Arn Anderson every week. And like, Sting is going to step in the ring with him. And you just know that these are 2 guys who are just excited to step in there with goddamn Sting. And every time I think that Sting is not going to come through, and there's not much he has to do to come through, but he just fucking does. And it's great, and he delivers, and he's good at what he does. And it's perfect because I don't know what a Sting singles match is going to look like, but also I didn't know what a Sting tag match is going to look like. So I can't even be mad about that anymore because maybe that's going to deliver too. Who knows? I think Sting is so great.
It's been a real surprise. It has been. And I was like, listen, it's cool. He showed up. It was awesome, cool moment. But it's very much kind of like, what are you really going to get? What are you really going to get out of it? But yeah, it's been a really pleasant surprise. And again, just back to the booking, I feel like the booking has been really solid. Mm-hmm. I don't think it would have been disastrous for Sting to have lost any of the matches he's been in so far. It's Sting. He's 62. People know what the deal is. But when you bring a guy in like that, and like Sting, he can still go to a surprising degree. There's a wow factor basically every time the guy does anything. When you keep him strong in his initial couple of matches, okay, when the time comes, it's like, okay, now it's time for Sting to lose. It's going to mean a little bit more because he has his wins. And it's not just that thing that we see all the time in wrestling. And I'm not even saying this is terrible because, it's not bad booking necessarily. But, when an old guy comes back, for whatever reason, the run that comes to mind is, remember Booker T in 2011? Good little series of matches. But, like, he wasn't going to beat, like, it was only Cody and, like, Wade Barrett, I think, was the other match. But it was like, he wasn't going to beat those guys because that's just not how they do it. So there was always a little bit of drama missing when you book a legend that way. Again, understandable. If a guy's past it, you don't want him beating your youngsters. But with Sting here, it's kind of like, one of these days is going to come, and it's going to be this big dramatic moment. and it's going to really matter, especially for a heel like whoever might be, a powerhouse Hobbs or whoever it ends up being, just puts him flat on his back and takes him out. It's going to mean a whole lot. I actually thought, I was surprised by the result. Were you surprised by the result here? Because I was kind of thinking, I was like, they've got babyface tag champions. I don't really see what Darby's. I don't know what's on the horizon for Darby in the immediate future. So I was like, I could see pinning Darby, sending him down the rankings. They go up, they face the Lucha Brothers. That was my expectation.
That was what I thought too. So I was surprised by the result too. But I do have a hunch as to what's next for Darby. And that comes off of the other match, which is probably Malachi would be my guess.
Okay. Yeah.
Because Malachi seems done with Cody, and that was the other match. It was Cody versus Malachi Black. I can't believe I couldn't remember that, because that was something to talk about. There's been a lot of discourse over Cody of like, should he go away is the question, which is kind of an absurd question when you think about the fact that like there are literally people in this building chanting AEW, but then also go away Cody. And it's like, you understand what, like, he is kind of responsible for a lot of pieces of why AEW exists, but
but that's wrestling. Wrestling's a cruel mistress like that. You have to take your lumps like that,
But
yeah.
I think people think that Cody is a lot more unaware than he actually is, because like he was acting very surprised by the boos, but I could very much see, because if you ask Cody, his favorite match of all time, Rock versus Hogan, and he's talked about how much he studied that match and how much he loves the psychology of that match. You could absolutely see him channeling The Rock from that match when he hears the boos and he looks off and looks surprised by it all. Absolutely channeling The Rock. But also, look at his goddamn attire. You know what he's going for here.
Yeah.
And the other piece of it, and the other reason I feel like he's probably more aware than you think is, and one person who's at least way more aware, Brandy comes out of the heel tunnel. I think she is at least aware of what her presence is supposed to bring to this character. That
you ever looked at her Twitter mentions? She has to know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, she's absolutely aware. When she got in the ring and sat with Malachi and flipped him off, and they're aware of like the reaction that Malachi has been getting, which has been really positive. I think this isn't as much of a hijacking as people think it is, because I think everybody in it's fairly aware of what's happening, and especially when like all the disconnect stuff was happening with Arn in the match. The match itself, I don't know, for a live crowd it was fine, but I know that people were I don't know. I saw a lot of disappointment in the match, saying that it was a big Cody match, and like the big Cody match is kind of overdone. I don't know what that means, but I'll say this as far as Cody is concerned. I think, like, I'm not the biggest Cody fan, but the position Cody's in, I feel like people want him to be Triple H. They want him to be Jeff Jarrett, because they want him. It's almost like they thought, oh, singles guy who was held back in his previous run and is now in an executive position. We know what that means. Yeah. And like the first thing Cody did, can't wrestle for the AEW title. It was like, oh, well, still, we know what you're going to do. You're going to come in and beat MJF, and then MJF beats him. And then was like, all right, but you created a title for yourself and you put yourself over Lance Archer, which, like, think about what that title is today.
Yeah.
And that whole statement that, the whole statement Tony Khan made about thermodynamics and how, like, you have to take somebody hot to keep the title hot. And Lance Archer had literally only been in the company like 4 weeks when he challenged for the TNT title. He wasn't exactly hot. And whereas Cody was a star. And if you wanted to make the belt hot, there was really only one way you could do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But like when you ultimately look at Cody's run, he has lost a lot. And at every turn, people are like, the second he does win, they're like, oh, of course, Cody holding everybody back, because they like want him to be Jeff Jarrett, because there is this expectation that that people who have been held back in their previous runs, who get executive roles, they kind of like go balls to the wall with like, okay, I need to make sure my legacy is cemented, and this is how I'm going to do it. But Cody hasn't done that at all, and he lost clean. He lost to Malachi twice, and the second one, it was kind of funny because if you think about where my seat was when Malachi got knocked out of the ring, I was paying attention to Malachi the whole time while everybody else, like, the cameras and everything are focused on Cody and Arn, and I was like, oh, Malachi just put something in his mouth. Huh? Wonder what that was. And then he gets back up and onto the apron, and so the myth spot didn't shock me at all because from my point of view, you could absolutely see him. He literally goes under the ring, grabs whatever he put in his mouth, and then there's a little bottle of Aquafina next to it, and he takes a quick sip and puts the cap back on, and then holds his mouth like this the rest for 2 more minutes, and then spits in Cody's face. So, but it was whatever. It wasn't anything I'm not going to participate in any Cody discourse.
I feel like I think it's a little over dramatic. A lot of the conversation about it, because I totally agree with you in the booking sense. I think the Cody is Triple H thing, I think it's totally overblown. I completely agree with you. He's been more of an asset to the company than a detriment in terms of making other people. I think what really fires up that conversation though is I think there are surface level Triple H and Jeff Jarrett things that why people
his entrance
the entrance is the main thing. I mean, it's the big and from the earliest days in the company when most people were just coming down and getting fireworks. He had the most crazy elaborate thing, and he's coming up and like he's a fucking God of War boss. Do you know what I mean? Rising from hell. It was a lot, but I think when you actually break down the booking, I think it's pretty harsh, but. It's also we talked a lot about how young AEW is. It's also changed so much in the time since, and I think it might have been Maxwell who said this. I can't remember. Someone had mentioned it. Is that a lot of the counterculture WWE stuff is now being played infinitely better by other people in the company, which I think is a factor as well. Cody doesn't really have that coolness anymore, I don't think, when you're on the same brand as CM Punk. Another factor that someone, I can't remember who brought this up to me, but that I think was really, really interesting was early on in the company, Cody was the guy. He was the public speaker. He was the press conference holder, blah, 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 blah. And, in a kind of subtle way, slowly over time, Tony Khan has come a little bit more into the spotlight, not in an obnoxious way, I don't think. But now it's kind of when people think about, AEW, all this great work, a lot of the promoter praise goes to Tony Khan. Yeah. And Cody now, I think people just look at as a wrestler who books himself, which is always a tough position to be in anyway, even if, like I said, I think a lot of the actual booking critiques are kind of harsh, they're a little bit overblown. But yeah, I think part of it is just I think the company has moved on an awful lot, and I'm kind of wondering. I don't know where you slot Cody going forward, but also he seems like he doesn't necessarily, he's not going to be there full time, I don't feel, based on interviews and his media projects and the way he's been this calendar year alone. I'm looking at him going, his slot is probably fine for a guy who's probably going to come back, do what he did here, have a feud, go away, film a TV show, come back, have a feud, injury angle, watch Go Big Show, come back, have another match, and that'll be the cycle. And I think that cycle's fine. You know what I mean? If he wants to come back and be booed for 4 weeks out of the year, I think that's fine as a cool special attraction. I think he has a bit of novelty appeal. So yeah, I think the whole thing's overblown. At the end of the day, Black won. They're on track with the new guy. I don't think there's too much to get too head up about.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And then the main event was Britt Baker defending the title against Ruby Soho, and I was kind of surprised that they cut off the second Ruby Soho, the part people really want to sing, during her entrance. One of the things I really liked that all the champions got was the championship graphic on the video
Yes.
ramp. I didn't
So
see
cool.
that because I'm right next to the ramp, so I can't see what the ramp was showing. So I didn't get to see that till I watched the show later. But that looked dope as
Awesome.
Britt is standing just in the middle of the ramp, and the championship graphic is like right in front of her. That video ramp is going to have to be something. I know they've only ever used it at Revolution.
Yeah.
But other than that, it doesn't get much use. Yeah, definitely for major events, that video ramp has to stay. And yeah, the match, fans were into Ruby Soho. But otherwise, I feel like it is a pretty standard affair match. They seem to be, if I may put my cowboy hat on for a second.
Always, absolutely.
Here's the thing. I noticed that a lot of people, when she first came back, were all about Jamie Hayter.
Yes.
And I was one of those folks who just wasn't seeing it. And part of it is just because, I don't know. Maybe I'm just at that stage as
you don't like British people. It's okay. You can say it. It's fine.
I was just gonna say, I think I'm just at that stage where, like, I don't know, I see new people on TV and I'm just like, these are, I don't know. I'm not like one of those guys who like sees women on TV anymore. It's like, oh my God, she's hot. Like, it doesn't hit me. Although my wife, who very much likes women, she saw Jamie Hayter the first time and was like, oh my God. But just didn't hit me till I saw her in person. And then I was like, oh, okay. I get it. I absolutely get it. I really get it. That's my cowboy hat moment of the show. But either way, great match. Okay match. And the right finish. Britt got to close out Dynamite in front of Arthur Ashe. She got the main event again, at least main event to the TV audience. To the paying audience, there was a lot more show to go. And that brought us into Rampage, which props to that ring crew, because Britt posing at the top of the stage, and then show goes to black. It fades to black. Like, we had Trons we could see everything on. Fades to black. And man. And in reference to the Black Mist, Senior Two Phone says Castrol GTX motor oil is all elite.
Oh, they're back. They're back in the wrestling game. I love it.
So they fades to black. Ring crew rushes out. For those wondering where it was, the Rampage mat is like 2 layers under. So the ring crew comes out, they like peel up the first layer of ring mat and then peel up another one, and there goes the Rampage, the AEW logo with the Rampage logos in the corner. And they come over to the barricade and they just like rip off the AEW ones to reveal Rampage ones that were under. Literally everything is just under. Everything Rampage is just under the Dynamite stuff, and they just like pull it all off. And Rampage probably started 15 minutes after. There was a very small gap. It was like they got everything changed out. Then the Acclaimed came out and they cut a rap on Tony Khan. And then Tony Khan brings out Lil Uzi Vert, who gets a massive pop. And also Jadakiss was in the audience too. That was weird too.
He's just a fan. I don't want to know this shit. I'm just watching. I'm here for the Acclaimed and nothing else.
Justin Roberts did shout him out, but other than that, they brings out Lil Uzi Vert, who gives some advice to Tony Khan, and Tony Khan cuts a really corny rap. And he literally, Tony Khan raps. I believe it was, my name is Tony Khan, and I'm here to say, if you don't get out of my ring, you're suspended for another 30 days. And then the Acclaimed leave. And then we started up Rampage, and Punk faced Powerhouse Hobbs. It feels like they're building to something with Punk and Hook. I think they are very aware of the internet reaction to Hook, and are now kind of sinking their teeth in on CM Punk and Hook. And I can't believe this is a real thing.
There were like 2 or 3 send Hook references on commentary during the show. So I think they know. But also, I think that's a great first match for someone like Hook, a first televised match.
Absolutely.
I mean, like going there with one of the, like, you know, like a generational wrestler who not only like a great wrestler, but like a really great details guy who can have a very smart match with a guy like Hook. Apparently, the whispers are that Hook is quite good. They are very, you know, excited about him as a prospect. I'm all for it. It's like they will have the internet for that day. It will be their thing. I mean, and that's great. Look, AEW's great at capturing those things. You know what I mean?
I can't wait. And like I said, the match felt like it was building all around. But honestly, this match was more about Hobbs, and about making Hobbs look like a dominant dude. And I feel like this match did its job in doing so, because ultimately it was the story of the match, and it was more of a story match, was Punk trying to almost survive Hobbs, and ultimately in the end it was the miscommunication of Hobbs and Hook that ended up allowing Punk to get the victory, but it was more about making Hobbs look good, and I felt like he did look good. And that was that. I felt like this episode of Rampage felt like, in the way that Dynamite felt more like a special event, this episode of Rampage felt like a Dynamite.
Yeah, I think so. And like a normal kind of Dynamite. Not like an insult, because I like Dynamite, it's good, but Rampage has had a distinct feel. I think the runtime is super important to that. This did feel kind of like a normal Dynamite, because you had like solid matches, but then you also had stuff where I was kind of like, oh boy, really, you had to pad this boy out to 2 hours, eh? Okay, fair enough.
And it felt structured like a Dynamite, and having been there in person, I will say that there is something about AEW's audio on tape shows where it doesn't come through as well as it does on the live ones, because I saw a lot of people remarking on like the crowd energy not feeling the same as it did on Dynamite. But to be honest, being there, the crowd was still hot. I'll tell you where the crowd died. But the crowd was actually still really hot for the Punk match. And then the 6-man tag, they were really hot for. Like, Adam Cole's music hits. Props to Mikey Ruckus for what he's pulled off with Adam Cole's theme.
So good.
Because like the fact that I saw it's number 2 on the iTunes charts right now in metal, but then on top of that, the crowd was singing along with it. And what's impressive to me about that is that crowd sings along with CM Punk's song. Of course, that's a song that's nearly 40 years old and people have known for decades. Jericho's song is a song that honestly I've heard get radio play. Like, people, it's weird that like metal stations, when they talk about Fozzy, they're like, did you know that Fozzy's lead singer is also a pro wrestler? It's not one of those things where it's like, oh, here's that band that is led by a wrestler. Like, there's a lot of people who there's a reason that Fozzy's able to tour, and it's not just like wrestling fans.
It's not a Jericho thing. About 2 weeks ago, a honest to God garbage truck was going outside the front of my apartment, absolutely blasting Judas full volume. I was trying to stick my head out my window and see, does this man have an AEW shirt of any description on? I was like, work from home still, so I was kind of like, what's going on? Oh my God, I have never, like, I was like, dude, you're in your like work vehicle and you're absolutely destroying these tunes through your speakers. I mean, respect, you know. But
like when you think about it, like look at YouTube. Like I pulled it up. Judas has 51 million views, excuse me.
Okay.
Like Cult of Personality has 54 million. So like these are songs that people know outside of pro wrestling. So the people singing along with those songs, that's kind of expected, right? But like people singing a song that they only heard for the first time like 2 weeks ago, and Adam Cole's theme, is so impressive to me, because it's brand new. And nobody knew like the verses or anything, but literally everybody is, when it says, you know what's all about, then the whole crowd goes, boom, Adam Cole, baby. And I'm just impressed that it happened that fast and people are that into the song. If you look at the AEW Music YouTube, where they post all the official AEW music stuff, they even posted Homicide's theme, and it's got it's got like 8,000 views, and you've got Sunny Kiss's theme 12,000, and they posted that Darby Allin video 650,000. Like that did well. And like 2.0's theme 45,000, and then Adam Cole's theme 1.2 million. Like,
whoa,
it is insane how much that theme has taken off. And Cole, he's over. He's very over. And I was reading that, or I was listening to his interview on Talk Is Jericho, and he talked about what his biggest red flag was for leaving WWE. And it was, because he mentioned he hadn't himself heard the rumors about being made to be a manager. Yeah. Now that said, that's not to say it wasn't true. It was just because, of course, there's a lot of creative stuff happens without talking to the wrestlers. Wrestlers usually don't, like Kofi Kingston has said that he learns a lot of what he's doing on Raw from Twitter, where he'll just like log in and they'll be like, you're having this or Kofi's facing this person. He's like, I am? All right, cool. And so there's a lot of creative stuff that just isn't talked about with wrestlers. That said, though, Adam Cole said that he was having the conversations with WWE and they were like, yeah, we'll bring it to the main roster. We might change your name and change your look. And he was like, ooh, that was a red flag. And he said they could see that I wasn't okay with that. But, and he's like, and they mostly backed off of it. However, he said the fact that it was a possibility, like, remained a red flag, because it was essentially like, hey, we know what you got established. We know what you got over as, and we are possibly considering not allowing you to do any of that. Right. And part of it is, I think, has to do with the fact that, if you look at it from WWE's perspective, a lot of who Adam Cole is and what Adam Cole does, they didn't own. Because of look at the fact that Adam Cole came to AEW kind of unchanged. He's doing the entire act. He's got his name. He has similar music. He's got all of his mannerisms, catchphrases, everything. He came
Panama Sunrise, the move names, they got it all.
Yeah, he came with everything intact. And so I can see why WWE was at least wanting to have that conversation of like, okay, we probably need to make you Cole Adams, and we probably need to, switch up Adam Cole Bebe to something else.
Oh, what's your finish called? The Panama. Okay, how about this? Your new cocktail maker. That's your gimmick, and we're going to be this thing that you use to spin the drinks around. And you hit people with it for your finish. How does that sound?
Yes.
Like, it's one of those WWE things where it's kind of like, as much as people make fun of it, like you were saying there, I kind of do get it from a kind of, they want to own the stuff, and that's not even a stupid thing for merchandising and stuff like that. But sometimes you get into their thought process, and you're not seeing the forest for the trees. It's like,
right,
give him the new name when he comes in. Again, and you guys have talked about this on RBR so much. Is NXT supposed to be a thing that they acknowledge and exists in the realm of Raw and SmackDown or not? Because I don't understand why you put the work into a guy like that on a show that's now on television. It's not even a network show anymore. It's on TV internationally, and then you're just like, well, you're not coming on Raw. It's like it's on the same network of TV. Like, what is this big thing where you think you can wave a wand and the audience doesn't know that it's the same guy? I really don't get it, and I can understand that's him, because, like you said, he not only brought that from NXT, he brought that from the Indies. So this is a guy who's been cultivating a very specific image for himself for 10 years at this stage. I don't think he'd want to have, I don't think he'd want to, shave his head and be completely.
And I can see why, from his perspective, if just the fact that they mentioned it is like, ooh, no matter what they offer from here on, the fact that is a distinct possibility that they would make me want to start everything over, is, especially at this stage, because like, he's young, but he's not a spring chicken. Like, he is in
Right.
early 30s. You know, this is somebody who at this point probably shouldn't be starting over. Should probably be using what he's established to now build a legacy off of. And I feel like he's doing that with the Super Click. And they had their tag match, 6-man tag against Jurassic Express and Christian Cage. This was fun. This was so much fun. And just when I think, we brought this up before the show, but when I hear people like Disco Inferno, and I don't know why I suffer through shit he says.
You take too much of the bait. That's your vice. You love it. You love reading that stuff. You have a problem. You have a problem, sir.
I do. I fucking do, right? Because like when I've heard him talk about Luchasaurus, right? And he's like, why does Luchasaurus do the things he does? I don't understand. He should be working like a big man.
Kermit the Frog or Piggy?
Yeah,
Have you seen this Luchasaurus?
Yeah, he's fucking Kermit the Frog, right? He's like, I think that the Luchasaurus, why do all the stuff he does? He should be working like a big man. And I'm like, yeah, why have a completely unique identity and something that fans like when you can just like do big man moves and big boots and be completely generic and not anything remarkable.
Especially because Luchasaurus, I kind of like him in the 6-man hot tag environment. I don't want to see Luchasaurus out there working like Vader. He's not good enough to do that. To be perfectly honest, he's not good enough. I like him what he's doing, and like I can kind of understand that talking about very broadly. But you got a big guy doing that in Miro. One Luchasaurus would ever be doing that. So let him do his flips. You know what I mean? You don't need two guys doing the same thing.
I agree. I think that he, when he does, like, he's so good in this position, like you said, in the 6-man position of like, he feeds, he does a great hot tag, and then he comes in and he just does some cool spots and people are really into it. And that's all he really fucking needs to do. This is literally all Luchasaurus ever needs to be. When I say I like Luchasaurus, this doesn't mean I want to see Luchasaurus become world champion. This doesn't mean I want to see Luchasaurus have a singles feud where we're exploring more of the Luchasaurus character. No, I don't give a shit about any of that. What I want to see Luchasaurus do is take a hot tag and come in and do his kip ups and hit his spin kicks and do a couple of flips and look awesome doing it. And the crowd is surprised every single time because this big ass guy doing these things and do a cool choke slam, but he does a double choke slam where he choke slams one young buck onto the other. And then he takes the Panama Sunrise and it looks really cool because he is as big as he is. Literally all this fucking guy needs to do. I don't care about any of the other stuff. I just want to see Luchasaurus do Luchasaurus things. And that's it. And that is always how I'll feel about Luchasaurus. And I think he was perfect for this match. And actually, when Christian got taken out, so there was the spots on the stage with the super kicks on the stage and all of that. And Christian hit a spear. I actually got a picture. Let's see if I can find it of when Christian gets thrown off the stage. He like lands like right next to me. And I'm like, oh, well, here's just Christian laid out in front of me. There's Christian and Marco Stunt in front of me. I'm like, oh, okay. They're just gonna lay here.
Nice.
But yeah, and of course the Super Click wins. And that set up one thing I wasn't aware of. And hey, Carrie, noting the YouTube chat is better. One thing I wasn't aware of, it was the match to set up. They didn't tell us in the arena that this set up Adam Cole versus Jungle Boy for Wednesday. Hell yeah.
That's awesome.
I am so excited for that. Like, actually really excited.
Yeah, no, that's gonna be really good. And that's a big. I feel like it's been a while since we've had a big Jungle Boy singles match. So I'm and that one for sure.
It's actually kind of the payoff to the ending to All Out, because that was who Adam Cole kicked. Like, this isn't just a match out of nowhere. This is the story. So that was cool. And then we had the Men of the Year versus Inner Circle match. There were some things I wasn't thinking about when this all happened until somebody brought it up on social media. But this was the match that completely lost the crowd. They were so dead for this match. Not only did it lose the crowd, it lost my section. So remember I mentioned how people could take their chairs.
Oh no.
I was the only chair left in my row. Literally my whole row left at, like, I feel like it was, the crowd was like, okay, we'll sing Judas and then we got
then we're out of here.
Yeah, and then we got to take the train. That was probably, I've seen 5 shows where Judas was sung live. And I think only 2 AEW shows I was at did not feature Judas, or at least didn't feature the sing-along yet. But this was definitely the loudest Judas has been sung. It definitely felt huge. But then everybody kind of died for the match. Okay. And I watched it. It was fine when I watched it on TV. I literally watched it this morning. But just nobody cared. And then there was the angle afterward. And somebody brought up how, like, Santana and Ortiz were on this show. And so was Sammy Guevara. And this was like a 10-on-2 beatdown of 2 Inner Circle members. I didn't even think about this at the time. Well, what happened?
Yeah, that's a rare miss by AEW. That's not the type of thing they usually whiff on. This angle's kind of weird. If you'd given me 5 guesses when Lambert was first doing his thing, I don't think I would have guessed Jericho would have been the guy to answer. I don't think that's a great fit. He's out here, given the content of Lambert's promos, Jericho being the guy to save. Don't know about that.
Yeah.
I'm also kind of just like, after the MJF feud, which was a lot and was highs and lows, mostly highs, I thought, I'm kind of at stage now where I'm like, I need a little bit of a Jericho reprieve, I think, especially because his performances have been, now I thought he was okay on Rampage, to be fair, but kind of hit and miss. All right, we've sung the song a lot. You've turned on people. You've had people turn on you. You've had blood feuds, cage matches, XYZ.
I was talking with Phil Lindsay about this yesterday, and he mentioned how the conversation people are having about Cody actually needs to be had about Jericho.
Yes, I think that's very fair. Yeah, that's very fair.
And yeah, I thought that was a really good point he made of, they're like, does Cody really have a place? Should he go away for a little while? And like, I think you're having that conversation about the wrong person. I do think Jericho is the guy that we maybe should be talking about. Doesn't really have a place right now. And yeah, but Men of the Year still won and won clean.
Yes.
So
that's another aspect of this angle that I'm a little bit unsure of. I like Lambert. I think the UFC guys have a cool aura about them, certainly. But I'm kind of like, and I like Sky and Paige. Just feels like a weird mix. I'm not sure.
Well, I liked what Sky and Paige were doing before in the Cody, in the Darby feud. In the Darby feud, I thought they were much better, and that I just like them just being cocky dudes, and like bringing up Scorpio Sky's MMA background and actually showing footage of it is kind of cool. It legitimizes him, but I don't know. I don't feel like he needed it, but I recognize that they also need a place for him. And yeah, 100% agreed on Jericho.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where it did kind of feel like we have this idea for Lambert, and then where our pro wrestlers come into it, it's like, okay, Paige and Sky, you're not really doing anything, and I guess Jericho answers it. That's it felt like the Lambert was the core of the idea, and where the actual pro wrestlers slotted in was kind of not. It was kind of secondary to the coolness of the of that. I thought the beatdown was really cool. I thought the post match thing was really good.
What Antox is saying is you're probably right, or I don't know, because like I feel like when you look at like the night after that night in Cincinnati, they had Eddie Kingston cut a promo with Miro. I think that program was supposed to continue. And then when the Suzuki incident happened, it was like, okay, now we need to pivot. And so that also means that we just need to move Miro into his next feud. Because we did have the Sammy Guevara segment where, you know what I would do if I were AEW? If I really wanted to mess with people a little bit. Because they didn't do it here, but I think this would be kind of one of the cooler things they could do is I would do a fake picture-in-picture of like Sammy Guevara comes out and they're like, we got to run a picture-in-picture. And like, don't run actual commercials, just run like an AEW ad or something on the side.
Right.
And then Sammy's doing the video stuff and then be like, oh my God, we have to come back and like come back from the picture-in-picture when like he gets ambushed by Miro. I think that would be a really cool way.
Tremendous.
Yeah, to mess with the picture-in-picture stuff of like make it so that it is like a can't miss kind of thing.
Yeah, totally.
That's how I would do it.
They did a finish recently on picture-in-picture, didn't they? I can't. It was some.
Yeah, they did a finish in picture-in-picture with.
Yeah.
I think it was Orange Cassidy versus Jack Evans.
Jack Evans. That was it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is a match.
They should do more of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. But I would do it just as a like fake people out of just a fake picture-in-picture. You start it, play just like an AEW ad, and then oh my God, we have to come back. We're so sorry. But like even fake it out like you have to like we apologize to our sponsors, but we can't miss this action. Kind of thing. And Tony Khan, I know you follow me, so if you're seeing this in your Twitter feed, you're welcome for that idea.
Yeah.
But anyway, and again, I have to stress that has nothing to do with why I'm leaving RPR because man, has that been thrown at me a couple of times. I will say this though. I'll give one hint at why I'm leaving RBR because I really don't want to like dwell on that. Multiple people have guessed it, and I'm shocked that the amount of people who have guessed it to where I had to like somebody guessed it. I remember I ran into a lot of RBR fans at Arthur Ashe, and at least 3 people said it, and I was like, how did you get that? Because I haven't said anything about that. And they're
I
like,
think it's a logical guess. I think it's a
you know what it is.
Yeah, well, you told me. But I'm not shocked people guessed it. To be honest, I'm a bit surprised how many people have said AEW. To be honest,
yeah, I haven't dropped a hint. And
no,
like,
you've been really good.
Yeah, and the amount of people that I confirmed it to him. I was like, yeah, you're right, but like, I haven't said a word about that, and that's interesting that you got it. But anyway, like I said, next Wednesday everything will make sense. But anyway,
Will walks out on NXT 2.0 stage. It'll all make sense.
And so the what else do we have? We had the Anna. Oh, so crowd died after that tag match.
Yeah.
Do not listen to anyone who ever fucking tells you that indie style wrestling doesn't work on a large stage, because I was worried, how does this crowd come back to life? And then we get Private Party's music hits. The Hardy Family Office comes out. Santana and Ortiz come out, and the Lucha Bros come out to the ring. And it was pretty timid reactions as far as like, or tepid. I don't know. Either way, they were okay reactions as far as their entrances were concerned. But once that match starts going balls to the wall, and it is just straight up indie style wrestling, just a nonstop 4-on-4, just everything happening, moves. That crowd comes to life. Everybody is on their feet. By the end of that match, everybody is just screaming that they have seen something awesome. And that match was the perfect match to wake people up who have been there at that point for almost 5 hours. Don't tell me that shit doesn't work. It has a place, and it absolutely works in for doing what you need to do, especially for bringing a crowd back to life, because it did it. It absolutely brought the crowd to life. That said, they kind of died again for Anna Jay versus versus Penelope Ford. But they were so into everything in that 8-man tag. Every spot, everybody was just lively. If it felt lively on TV, I hope it did, because
it did.
The crowd was just so into it. And the main event was the tag match, the unsanctioned lights out match. Suzuki-gun, which, you know, it's funny that the whole thing about everybody being upset over Suzuki's music being cut off. there were so many people set to sing "Everybody Dies," and then it cuts off for Lance Archer to go into Suzuki's music. And I thought, oh, no one's going to be mad about that. But it is fascinating that this is all based off of somebody's music getting cut off, and you cut off Lance Archer. Yeah. But people were happy to get to sing Kaze ni Nare, and we got that. Moxley makes his way out to the ring. Pretty much everybody was there for Kingston all night. When he was done commentary for Elevation, people were chanting for Kingston while he was on commentary. People were ready for Eddie Kingston all night. And yeah, this was cool plunder and very Passion of the Christ match when it came to handcuffing Moxley. But I will say, there's a lot of conversation about what Moxley's place is today, but the fact that you still can put him on last and have a crowd invested, he's still like the babyface in a way.
I think so. Yeah,
he's still that guy that you can put on last and send the crowd home happy, and they're still really into him, and they loved him. I will say, when Homicide's music hit, playing gunshots in an arena, probably not the best idea as like the way to shock people, because there was this moment of like, what the fuck was that? And then you see the word Homicide come up on the screen. You're like, oh, okay.
What a way to announce it. We better leave, folks. Look at those big letters on the screen. Kind of tasteless. Most disgusting promotional tactic.
Yeah, so the music hit, and here comes Homicide in a complete shocker, because he's got some GCW stuff to promote, and he makes the save, and Moxley and Kingston win. The crowd gets sent home happy. Eddie Kingston gets on the mic after the show and cuts a big old promo. He thanks Homicide for basically, he was like, Homicide put my career in action, and I owe everything to Homicide. And then he talked about how we planted our flag in New York. He was like, this thing sold out. He was like, there's a couple of people who just showed up here from another company. And he's like, and he said, now hold on, because a couple of people started booing. And he was like, hold on. When we sold this show out, those people hadn't even shown up here yet. And we filled this thing up. We planted our flag in New York City. And he said, but now that they're here, CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, Adam Cole, Ruby Soho, that flag is now in cement. New York belongs to AEW. And then crowd cheered, and they went home, and John Moxley and Eddie Kingston drank beers, and everybody was happy. And we were like, hell yeah, we just got to see all of that. And a lot of people were like, oh shit, how are we getting home? Because the 7 train stops running after midnight, and none of us got out of here till like 12:30. But I Ubered back to my hotel, and it was fine. But man, what a night.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, it sounds like to stick all the way through. It's like you're saying about Moxley just there. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's very deliberate, I think, to put him on last, and he's been advertised for some dark matches as well on some cards. It's like that has to be on purpose. You know, he still means a lot.
He still does
there through that time. Was that the longest non-WrestleMania taping you've ever been to?
Yeah, it was. To tape 2 2-hour shows like that, because like I've been to like WWE super shows where they've taped a Raw and a SmackDown, but like typically the way the SmackDown was taped was they would just like rush through the matches and then not tape any, like not show us any backstage stuff, because like the difference between WWE and AEW, of course, is that AEW does so much stuff in the ring that even if they're taping a second 2-hour show, most of the show's in the ring. So like they didn't show us any of the video packages. I didn't see the Andrade stuff till this morning, or the Matt Hardy promo backstage, any of the video packages. None of that was shown to us. It was just the matches taped. But But even still, because AEW has so much focus on matches, that can still take up like an hour and a half. Whereas when SmackDown would like tape after a Raw, it was just like, okay, we maybe taped like 45 minutes of in-ring content at best, and then we'll insert everything else later. So I was maybe there an extra hour. No, this was long. But honestly, just being in that atmosphere, it was very unique. Seeing there was people behind the stage, and I still couldn't believe people who bought those seats. Because like the tickets don't even say on them limited view, they say obstructed view. Like they are warning you are obstructed by this like big ass chandelier, and you're probably going to be watching on the Tron most of this show. But good on you for buying these tickets.
Yeah.
You want to be there, and you're in the building. But yeah, it was cool. Arthur Ashe, I couldn't believe by the end of it. I'm like, I see what Tony Khan saw of like, I can't believe this was under our noses all this time, because wrestling typically runs in basketball arenas. But what's interesting about basketball arenas is that basketball is very long. And so you are almost kind of telling people that you're either going to get this side of the this side of the action or this side of the action.
Right.
You're not necessarily going to get, unless you're like directly in the middle, you're not expected to be able to have a view of the whole thing. And same with hockey. You know, wrestling's either held in hockey or basketball arenas. You're typically looking at kind of a lengthy arena. And so because it's that way, it's more built outward. Whereas tennis is all about what's happening in the center. And so there's not a whole lot of like movement across. And so with tennis, you want to build it in a way where everything is focused on the middle. And so you build more upward. And because you build more upward so that everybody has a view of what's happening in the center, that is way more conducive to pro wrestling, because pro wrestling is also about what's happening directly in the center. And so, yeah, I can't believe nobody thought of this in all of these years. Nobody thought to do this. And it was fascinating to me because there was all this talk of over the years of, hey, if AEW runs New York, where should they go? And they're like, Madison Square Garden kind of belongs to Vince, and like WWE helped establish Barclays. They can't really run there. Maybe they should run someplace small like Hammerstein Ballroom or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, that venue fits like 1,200 people. And they were like, no, fuck that. We're going to Arthur Ashe Stadium, and we're just going to fill that shit up. And like, honestly, AEW could run that every year. Arthur Ashe is apparently the rumor going around is that they want it. They want, they want like annual events. They maybe want it sooner. And I can't help but wonder if, what that means. Cause, I just literally got like a Fightful alert that said, something about, them wanting it maybe sooner, and my thought was like Revolution sooner.
Oh, interesting.
So who knows? I don't know. That was good though. Hey, Barry, thanks for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast. It's been too long. I can't remember the last time you and I did audio together, or video as well in this case.
Yeah, I love doing video, and I will, as long as I can, continue doing video. But as far as this was concerned, Wrestling with Weekends was a really, really fun, I guess you can call it, experiment, because I like one-on-one conversations, and I love the four-way podcast that RBR has been since it started. But there is something to just like a good one-on-one conversation, and doing it via video is just, I don't know. I like seeing facial expressions, and luckily me and Barry, two good-looking dudes. And
absolutely.
So yeah, thank you, Senior Two Phones, for the kind words. Barry over here. There we go. That's what I was trying to say. Barry over here, he's got a Twitch, and it's fucking hilarious. And watching Barry play pretty much anything is always entertaining, and you should follow Barry on Twitch, which is
twitch.tv/Barry Ladd.
yes, it's just Barry
No
Ladd.
That's it. My branding. I gotta hire a branding officer to try and get all my stuff in a line. But yeah, that's where I'm at on the old Twitch.
Yes.
Thank you very much. That was a great plug. That was a better plug than I could have done, I think. Thank you so much.
I mean, honestly, your Mario Sunshine playthroughs are just so great.
That was when I was like, you know what? I like this streaming thing. It's not bad. It's pretty fun. It's like, it's stressful and it's hard work, but it's great stuff. But honestly, it's like so great to be here on one of, I know you've got your little Dean Ambrose farewell tour going on at the moment with like six house shows left. But it's honestly, it's a great pleasure and honor to be on one of your last shows under the RBR umbrella. Because we've had some great chats over the years, and even more importantly than that, I have gotten so much entertainment. I mean, the hour count is probably exactly however many episodes you guys have put out, because I've been listening since I think 2009 was my first year, and just, oh my god, so many communities.
Remember the fan off forums? Like, yeah, you were part of the fan off forums,
like the forums and all the different moving forums and Facebook page, and then now obviously you guys are on Mixler and stuff like that, writing for the blog on and off over the years. Oh my god.
So thank you. I appreciate it, and I wanted to have you here as one of my last guests, and turn out to be on Wrestling with Weekends. Like I said, Wrestling with Weekends was fun. Just having the one-on-one conversations. Pretty much everybody I got to talk to, with Jesse Davin, who actually, by the way, I don't necessarily do a thank you to her yet, because I guess here's a little announcement. Jesse Davin is guest hosting RBR on this coming Wednesday.
Awesome.
I guess now she's the host of K-Babes. Jesse Davin was my first guest, though, on Wrestling with Weekends. And there was Phil Lindsay, who was really good, and Maddie Anderson, who was phenomenal to have on. I'll be on her podcast, I think Thursday. So me and Maddie Anderson will be doing another show. And there was Joe Holbert last week, and Righteous Reg, and B-Rob was phenomenal as well, and now the Barry Lad. So thank you, everybody, for being a part of Wrestling with Weekends, and I will wrap this up and say goodbye and good night and good afternoon, I guess, because it's technically still pretty early in most parts of the country. But ladies and gentlemen, and I promised I would play the closing music for the audio version, so I'm going to do my 2 endings. So for video, I'm just going to say peace out and bye-bye, and I'm going to bring up the graphic. So later, y'all.